get right to our first caller. We've got Joanne calling from Nebraska. Joanne, thanks for calling.
Thanks, Kevin. Thanks for having me on.
You bet.
I wonder if somebody could tell me what exactly is traceability and how it affects me directly as a cow-calf producer.
Okay. You know, that's a great question. And Bill, maybe I start with you, maybe several of you that like to follow up. But define traceability. So much confusion around this issue.
Well, traceability, as it applies to this animal disease traceability program that is being implemented by APHIS, has to do with the ability of our government and our state veterinarians to track an animal back to its herd of origin. You know, if we have some contagious diseases, health officials are going to need to know what other animals were exposed. So we need something in place for, and this is the mechanism that APHIS is using to get the traceability from the ranch of origin through the feedlot and up to the packing plant and back down. So if we find a disease somewhere, we can track it back.
But you're speaking specifically of animal health traceability.
That's right.
And you spent most of your career working on another side of the traceability issue. Is that right?
Yes, when you look at traceability, because of the complexity, you have to look at three components to traceability I always talk to folks about, which is the breadth of the traceability system, the depth, and the precision. And that could be different depending on specific market demands or in customer demands from a voluntary value-added perspective. Breadth means how much information are we going to collect on that particular animal or group of animals as they move through the chain. Depth means how far forward and how far back do we go. And precision means the accuracy of the information that we have to move forward. And then also now you have another level required by some markets, which is verification. So from a cow-calf producer's perspective, when you look at these value-added programs, you have to understand what the standard is and then how you meet those specific requirements of a given market today.
Very good. Pete is calling us from Texas. Pete, go ahead with your question.
Hi, this is Pete Bonds. Most of your panelists know me, but this is mainly for Mark. How come if the value for the exported cattle are so great, how come we quit getting a premium up in the north and are still getting somewhat of a premium in the south?
So the question about premiums and how those fluctuate and so forth, especially given this environment that we're in, that we have such exciting export markets.
Right. It's really strictly supply and demand, and there's several programs that pay premiums. The non-hormone treated cattle program pays a premium. The natural program pays a premium. The age and source verified program for Japan pays a premium. And it depends on the number of cattle in the region and the demand by the packer for those cattle. Specifically in Japan, if there's a larger number of cattle available, the price will obviously be down. If there's a smaller number of cattle available and there's more packers bidding on those cattle, obviously the price will be up. And again, a lot of it's predicated on the packer and what kind of orders he has from Japan and how much demand he has for those types of cattle to pay a premium for.
Very good. Kenny's calling us from Colorado. Kenny, go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me on.
Yeah.
Hey, my question is, I fully support the trace bag, but I'm a little curious with this listeria outbreak that we had this fall. I realize that's food safety, but they traced that back to an exact farm, and it was contained. I realize there were some deaths involved. My question is there some way to limit liability back to the producer in a catastrophic event like that in case there is a trace back so that the producer doesn't get sued out of business, so to speak?
You know, this food safety issue is a huge issue, and we've seen, you know, obviously what's happened in a cantaloupe issue right here in Colorado. Let me ask you, Mark, to begin with that. You're closest to the consumers. How would you respond?
Well, that's a tough issue because, as we pointed out early on, the food safety and traceability components really don't mesh. Traceability is really about either animal disease or specific specifications for those cattle. When it gets to the packing plant and it becomes a pathogen control issue, and I'm just not sure that there's any application for traceability when it comes down to food safety.
Okay. Jim is, oh, did you have a comment? Jim is calling us from Ohio. Jim, thanks for calling.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Yes.
I appreciate what you're doing. I've got a two-part question. Number one, the thing that probably bothers me as a small producer the most is not being able to utilize state-inspected facilities and being able to market, direct market, on a multi-state basis. Whereas, we look in the grocery stores and we have foreign products coming in from all over the world that are marketed in the Walmarts and the Krogers and whatnot. And I really doubt if the foreign processors are near as good as our state-inspected processors. So what's the association doing to try to get that part of the paradigm fixed?
Very good. Colin, why don't you take a crack at that? Somebody that wants to take animals to a state-inspected facility and be able to sell them, across state lines and so forth. Where does the organization stand on that?
Well, that is a great question. It's been a huge issue for us for quite some time. The good news is, in the 2008 Farm Bill, NCBA was actually able to get language put in there to allow these state-inspected facilities to ship across state lines. So the rulemaking process is in full swing on that. We do have that in place. A lot of the state-inspected facilities are now in the process of getting their certifications and applying through the process. But hopefully we'll have some of those approved and going here before too long, where a lot of these smaller plants, ones that have either a regional brand or a lot of times provide some opportunities, local producers can get across state lines. Because our perspective has always been, if it's safe enough to eat in Texas, it's safe enough to eat in New Mexico.
Absolutely.
And that's something we have supported. And as a result of our efforts, we did get the language in to change that.
Yeah, that's great news and lots of great opportunities for producers, just like Jim. We'll head out to the West Coast. I understand we have a call from California. Billy, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, sir.
Billy Mitchell, fourth-generation rancher here in the Mojave Desert. The issue about this brucellosis, I would like to, I don't care who answers it. We have never had a case of that down here. We've had to vaccinate. And I wonder when we're going to make the state responsible for the animals that are carrying this. And I presume, and I could be wrong, buffalo do carry this still. So if we don't solve it through those herds and these ranchers in the northern country that have these animals going, I mean, how can we resolve that issue? We are down here paying the price for it, and we have had no outbreak here whatsoever. Whoever would like to answer that for me, I would love it.
Yeah, maybe I'll give that to Bill. Obviously, great question. We have a very healthy U.S. cattle herd here. And yes, there are some issues. You mentioned one in Montana. Billy's mentioning one out there that really are less about our domestic herd, but they do have implications. How would you respond to Billy?
Well, the brucellosis is a tough issue because it is in the elk and the bison in Yellowstone Park. And there is absolutely no willingness on the part of the U.S. park or the Fish and Game to eradicate the disease. So that is going to be a perpetual reservoir. So unfortunately, we're going to have to live with brucellosis in this whole country because we do have that reservoir. Cattle are shipped around the country. We've had an outbreak in every state, Montana, Wyoming, and Idaho that border the park, and it's probably going to continue to have outbreaks on there. APHIS has changed the regulations concerning the area around the park, and they have designated surveillance areas where they have different rules. They have mandatory testing on a lot of those herds on an annual basis. You have to have a plan in place for how you're going to manage for the disease. And so brucellosis is always going to be with us, and another one on a much more national basis is tuberculosis. There's another one that is contagious that we do need traceback on. Very good. Well, this is a great discussion that we've just begun. Please keep those calls coming. Our panelists are answering your questions again at 1-888-824-6688. We're also accepting questions via email. Just email us at c2c@beef.org. And it's a great time to join as a member of the National Cattlemen's Beef Association. Give us a call now at 1-866-USA-BEEF. Stand up for the future of our industry and our way of life.